Welcome back to New Testament Latin. We're in Effort chapter 3. You're really here in lesson 3. We're only going to learn a new tense. So nothing terribly new from what we've learned before. No new grammatical concepts besides the fact that, of course, as in English, we've got a past tense and a present tense and a future tense. Of course, they have the same thing in Greek. And so the tense that we're going to learn today is the imperfect tense. The imperfect tense generally refers to the past when it's in the indicative mood, which is all we're learning right now. So for now, we're just going to learn that the imperfect deals with the past tense, and it views the action of the verb as ongoing. So I was loosing, or I used to loose, I used to eat, I was eating lunch yesterday, that kind of thing. So and here's how we form the imperfect indicative active. So remember, the imperfect is our tense, the indicative is our mood, and the indicative is the only mood we're really dealing with right now. And active, that's the voice. And again, the active voice is all we're dealing with right now. And so now we need the person and the number, singular and plural. And then, so those are the endings are down here. But look how the imperfect is formed. It has a specific pattern to its formation. You take an epsilon plus the stem, the present stem of your verb, and that's the present stem of our paradigm verb, Leo, and then plus the endings. And so how do you get the present stem? Well, you take the dictionary form. That's the form you learn in the vocabulary. That's the form if you're going to look up what a word means in the dictionary. You need to be able to figure out what its present, indicative, active, first person, singular form is, and then you take off the ending. So Leo is our verb, I loose, and so we subtract off the omega, the ending. That gives us our stem. So to form the imperfect, we take the epsilon plus the stem, and then plus these endings, on, s, n, and again, as in other forms we've seen, the new can be there or not. Just like we don't say apple, we say an apple. Amen, eta, on. On sn, amen, eta, on. Or ella on, ella s, ella n, ella amen, ella eta, ella on. Okay. Obviously, you need to make this a flashcard and study it. Make this whole thing a flashcard and study it very well. Remember our rule for verbal accent. If the last syllable is short, the accent recedes. It goes back 3 syllables, and it will be an acute accent. If the ultima is long, the accent only goes back 2 syllables. Now, it just so happens that here in the imperfect, every last syllable here in every form is short. And so the accent's always going back to the third last syllable. And so if we're going to do this and we didn't know where the accent was, we're trying to figure out where the accent goes on this. I'm going to turn my keyboard over to Greek, aren't I? And then so we would see, okay, this is short here in this form, amen. This that's a short epsilon. So then I'm going to count back. 1, 2, 3. That's where my what am I typing on? There we go. That's where our accent needs to go. Okay. All right, so memorize those forms. Note the chart on bottom of page 13, considering the epsilon augment. So we're adding an epsilon to the stem to make the imperfect. Well, some stems begin with vowels. And so when we add a vowel to a vowel, those vowels want to run together. And so what happens when you add an epsilon to a short vowel is that you get its long equivalent. So you can see on the bottom of page 13 that epsilon, if you add that to an alpha, you get an eta. If you add it to an epsilon, you get an eta. If you add it to a short omicron, you get an omega, and so forth. And then when you add it to a iota or an upsilon, it remains, those letters remain unchanged. So you can take a look at that chart. Again, if you just remember that adding that epsilon makes a short vowel long, you'll be good to go. Also at the top of page 14 now, we have some irregular forms. These irregular imperfects on the top of page 14. So echo, I have, word we've already learned. Its imperfect is eichan. We would expect epsilon plus epsilon to give us an eta. Well, here's an irregular verb. In English, we have them as well. Thelo ends up with athalon. So there's kind of, in an older form of this word, it used to have an epsilon on the front. That's why it ends up looking like that. And the same with mellow, end up with amelon. So you should make these part of your vocabulary flashcard for this week. These irregular, imperfect forms of these verbs. On page 14 and 15, you need to make your flashcards of these words. I'll read them there for you. Airo, I take up or I bear. Baptizo, I baptize. Grapho, I write. Ageiro, I raise up. Estio, I eat. Kerusso, I proclaim, I preach. Crino, I judge. Pempo, I send. Sozo, I save. And Pharaoh, I carry. Okay, now at this point, what you're going to want to do today is to make your flashcards, study this vocabulary, know it really well, and study your vocabulary from the last lessons, and then tomorrow come back and do the translations. And so come back to this point in the tape tomorrow and do the translations, and now it's tomorrow. So let's take a look at these translations. Now, mostly in this chapter, they're going to give you, because again, all we know are verbs. We've got to wait for next lesson to get some nouns. So we're just practicing, recognizing. So when I look at this, aestheon, what do I see? I see an on ending. That should tell me that I'm in the imperfect tense. And then sure enough, if I think, oh, this eta on the front, when I'm in the imperfect, I add an epsilon to it. So this is either going to be ostheon or estheon. So originally it's going to be estheo. So if I'm thinking, what is the original form of this word, I know that eta is originally epsilon plus either an alpha or an epsilon, okay, plus theon, plus, I know that the dictionary form, see, I'm trying to figure out what the original word is so I can look it up in the vocabulary. So the original word is estheo. Estheo. I eat. So aestheon, that on ending is either first person singular or it's second person plural. So we've got to switch over to English again. It's either I was eating or they were eating. So just like in English, I eat and you eat has the same ending. So the first singular, eleon, third person plural, eleon, I eat, they eat, happen to share the same form in Greek. So, akerison, you can see that comes from the word kerusso, so that's third person singular. He was proclaiming, I should say, because it's imperfect. Can't type. Eichan, that's either I or they. Was or were, having, from echo. Heuriskes, that's from eurisco, I find, so this is you were finding. And ekuata, y'all were hearing. Right? Okay. You can work through the rest of these now one at a time, or sit down and do them all at a sitting, and then come back and start the tape from here, and I will give you the correct answers. So 2, aorta. Now look at that iota subscript there and an eta. So I know that's got to be, that originally started as an alpha iota subscript, so that was airo, or I should say, that's interesting, isn't it? It actually wasn't a iota subscript. This is something that we should remember about how these epsilon augments work. So when I add an epsilon augment to a vowel with a iota in second place, to a diphthong with a iota in second place, that is going to go subscript. All right, so now I'm going to end up with, see if I remember how to type this. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. There we go. So A reta. I gave it the wrong accent, but you get the idea. That iota is going to go subscript. Let's see here. We're getting close. I don't often have to type in. Well, you get the idea. Arita. Arita. So that's y'all were taking up. Y'all were bearing. Oh, we gotta switch back over to English. Y'all were bearing and kai aferita, and y'all were bearing and carrying. Y'all were bearing and were carrying. 3. Eiren kai epistoion kai egraphan. So he was bearing, and I was believing, and I was writing. And of course, that epistoion and egraphan could be they were believing, they were writing. We don't know because we don't have much context. 4. Etheles blepein kai MLS kerisein. And that's a question. Were you wishing, Etheles, were you wishing to baptize? Blepein, to see. Blepein kai MLS kerisein. And were you, MLS, were you about to proclaim? Question 5. Krinita kai ethelen sodzain kai baptidzain. You judge. Now no, krinita, that's present tense. There's no epsilon on the front to make it imperfect. You judge, and he was wishing to save and to baptize. Baptidzain. So sodzain, baptidzain, those are infinitives, completing the idea of wishing. Melamen ke risain kai sodzain. Melamen. We are about to. We are about to ke risain, to proclaim, and sodzain, to save. But it's a question. So in English, we're going to do, are we about to proclaim and to save? All right, so up through this lesson, our translation work is really just a matter of practicing with these verbs, making sure we understand how the tenses work and how the persons and numbers work. Next time, when we get to lesson 4, we're going to get into nouns and really how to translate. So learn these forms very well, study your vocabulary so that you are ready to go for lesson 4 when we dive into the big matter of real Greek sentences with verbs and nouns.